Hey guys, my name is Jeff. Welcome to First Words. This is a new series on the verses. So I'm going to make myself a little bit bigger just for a moment. Give me 1 second. Yep. So again, this is First Words with the verses. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a couple of poems that I have received, and we're going to give some kind of rapid first reactions to things we like, things that are tripping us up, all in the goal of trying to help these poems stand out more, enhance their message, let the poets know places where I think things are working pretty well versus places where maybe I'm getting a little bit confused or maybe missing the message and things like that. And of course, we would love to have your feedback as well. So as we're going through these poems, if you have questions, if you have comments, anything like that you think would be helpful to the writers, I encourage you to join the discussion. You can leave a comment over on the side or below, and we'd be happy to see that. All right, let's get right into it, though. I'm going to bring back our friends here. So again, we have two poems that we're going to be looking at tonight. First one here, actually, this is our longer one. I'm going to start with a shorter one first. We will come back to that one. This is the shorter one. Okay, and this poem is titled Transition with Aquariums. Okay, so I think anytime I start by looking at a poem, I always start with the title, just kind of see what it conjures, if anything at all. So when I see the word transition, that's making me think this is a period of change. Something new is going to happen, something different, either for the speaker. It could also just be, so I'm seeing just in terms of format as well, that we already have sections, numbered sections that also correspond to the stanzas. I haven't counted yet, so I don't know if these are all equal length or not. So the transition could also just be in reference to the change in time. It could also be a change in season. Who knows? Something that's interesting is that I'm seeing some of these places are staying the same, right? So we got New England, and then later on we move. Okay, so the transition could even just be to switch from one place to the next. Okay. I think transition is also very interesting that so we have transition immediately followed by the comma, which again is also punctuation wise a form of a transition. So you kind of get that reiteration, kind of reinforcement with the structure a little bit. And then with aquariums, unexpected. This is one of those titles that if you're just kind of like reading through a list of just titles of poems in the index of like an anthology or a collection, it's like, oh, this is interesting, unexpected. See what else is going on. In terms of the title tone, I think it's also helpful to know, like, when you're looking at a title, is there any sort of emotion that comes across? I don't really know what the view is on the transitions. Again, these are all first reads, by the way. I've not read these poems. So you're getting very much my rapid kind of blind thoughts. So I don't know as a reader just yet how I'm supposed to feel as I'm reading through this. And I'm placed in terms of the aquariums, but again, I also don't fully know how to interpret the transitions. Everything at this moment is somewhat vague. Okay. So there's just things to kind of consider for the title. If you're watching this, whether on the replay or in the comments, let me know, what is the title bringing up for you? These are questions that you really want to be considering. Okay, so I'm going to read, I guess we can read the whole thing, and then we'll go through different sections. So 1, New England Aquarium 2017. I'm meeting friends from church, but stop to watch the sea lions. I lose sight of the penguins as I wander deeper. I've just moved away for the first time. It'd be so nice to be more spiritual, I believe, so I craft an altar in my bone-white loft just away from the skylight which floods it with sun. Among other things, I'll try to embrace my feminine energy, start to adore the moon. I watch a moray coil into a rock's crannies, hiding. I ponder where I'm supposed to go next. There are no signs. New England Aquarium 2019. I've shaved the insides of my head. A mistake. In March, it's a sign like the billowing spines of the lionfish I'm watching. It floats, unconcerned by the masses teeming by. They swarm, Cluster, move on. The lionfish remain. The giant Pacific octopus is next. I watch it curling and crenellating against the rocky tank. As I watch, color ripples across its skin. It can camouflage, be invisible in the sea, but stand out just as often. I have abandoned many things, including my altar, but I bow to the crimson octopus, grinning at it. Beautiful, visible. St. Andrew's Aquarium 2021. I go with a friend. We are both masking, and the man at the front desk calls us ladies as we pass and sanitize our hands. Sharks in skates skim the sand of their pool. Horseshoe crabs glide under a soft light. An iguana sunbathes, and I snap photos of moon jellies floating in a blue glow. I never wear skirts anymore. Cuttlefish flutter through the gloom. The aquarium is near silent, the two of us almost the only people in it. It is as if we're in another world, full of life almost impossible to imagine, its wonder, its depth. Okay, so transition with all the gender mentions, I'm guessing this also has to do with kind of identity and things like that as well. Okay, let's kind of go section by section. And if things come up that we want to bounce around to, we can also do that as well. So New England Aquarium. Okay, so we're in New England. Obviously 2017, but I don't know a season. Which is interesting because I know we get months later on. Eating friends from church. Okay, so we're tied in already with kind of this religious aspect. And if the transition is again referring back to especially things related to gender, um, I think that contrast between, or not really contrast, but that's obviously a topic in terms of faith and religion that often comes up. And religion isn't always the kindest view on that. So I'm curious to see if there's going to be any tensions related to that come through. But for the moment, we're very neutral. So I'm meeting friends from church. Okay, so no real emotion there. But stop. Okay, so that stop, I like that stop. That stop's doing a lot of work, right? It's obviously ending the line, but it's also it's reinforcing because the word stop has that physical meaning as well. Um, and then we also get the enjambment as well, like stop to watch. I really like that work that first line is doing because it's probably the most engaging part of that first line. And there's some other things that I think are interesting in that first line too, but I think that's the part that stands out to me the most immediately. It also is kind of showing already kind of this we're fractioning off a bit from the church already to a degree, and I think that comes across when you have stop at the end there, especially separated by that comma. So I meet friends from church, but stop to watch the sea lions. I lose sight of the penguins as I wander deeper. Meeting friends from church. Okay, so friends from church, everyone's meeting at the aquarium. So it's a fun day at the aquarium, I guess. But they stop. The speaker is alone, it appears. Okay. And they're about to meet their friends, but then they are continuing to be alone because they want to go see the sea lions. I don't know, again, in terms of like transitions and things like that, if sea lions have a deeper meaning. That's something that I would have to Google and do research on. But that's obviously a choice. Why are we specifically choosing sea lions? Um, and then as soon as we mention the sea lions, we then immediately move on to penguins. Are the penguins and the sea lions in the same exhibit? I'm curious about that switch from animals. When we switch from one to the other, we never, as soon as we get to sea lions, you've kept me in this moment for this whole first part. This whole first part, the whole first two lines, you really kept me in this moment. It's a narrative poem. Not seeing much lyric just yet. And then you move me, which is somewhat unexpected, especially because there's other things going on in that beginning that kind of contradict that. You're stopping, the action stops, but then you immediately shift me. So I don't know if the sea lions are in the same exhibit or not. Why the shift to penguins? And I'm not saying that's a poor choice or anything like that. I'm just genuinely curious, why are we not sticking with the sea lions for the next part? Why are we jumping to penguins? Um, Lost sight of the penguins as I wandered deeper. But I thought you were stopping to watch it. So like here, okay, so like up here you are. I'll change my color. So you're stopping to watch, right? Okay, so you stop to watch, but then you say, "As I wander deeper." When did we wander again? I thought we were still. I thought we were watching. When did that stop? So just in terms of movement, I'm a little bit thrown off personally. And again, this is all in the first read, so there's going to be issues and things I miss, but just kind of want you to know the logic or the train of thought I have. I've just moved away for the first time. Okay, so this is adding some emotional significance. Okay, just moved away for the first time. Let's go back to blue. This almost feels like something that would have come later to me. I would have expected that more in the middle or towards the end. I moved this away for the first time. It would be nice to be more spiritual, I believe. Why? What is leading? Again, there's these kind of like jumps I feel like we're making. Like I was so grounded in the first line, first line and a half. And then after that, it just feels like we picked up the pace so much. Um, what led to this? It's nice to be more spiritual. So. And I'm not even saying these questions kind of need to be answered, but these are just questions that I have as a reader. Just like, oh, so now we have this reflection. What caused this reflection? What about seeing the sea lions and the penguins caused this reflection on spirituality? How did I get here? So I craft an altar in my bone white loft, just away from the skylight which floods it with sun. Okay, so I am no longer I am out of the aquarium. Okay, so no longer in the aquarium. I am gone. Assuming I'm the speaker, I'm taking the role of the speaker. I am no longer in the aquarium. But even as the reader, I'm no longer there. No longer in the aquarium. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. Sorry for my chicken scratch. Okay, so craft an altar in my bone white loft. Bone white. I feel like it's a missed opportunity for some refreshing language. Bone white. I think it's somewhat, I don't know, somewhat expected. I think with white, there are some aspects of it I appreciate. I appreciate kind of like gives kind of like that Spartan quality, the spare quality, um, even potentially like hostile quality. Um, but I do think it's a little bit unexpected. Is there a way? Can we make this fresher? Can it be any fresher? It's kind of something I would just ask myself. So I craft an altar in my bone white loft, just away from the skylight which floods it with sun. What is the altar made out of? So I craft an altar. How? How do you do this? What does that look like? It's one of those things that, like you say, like, oh, I crafted an altar this afternoon. Okay, cool. How'd you do that? What did it look like? What was involved? Um, just away from the skylight which floods it with sun. I'm a little bit confused about the it. Does it mean the loft? Or does it mean the altar? I'm a little bit confused there. So I craft an altar in my bone white loft, just away from the skylight which floods it with sun. Among other things, I'll try to embrace my feminine energy, start to adore the moon. Among other things. Why are we mentioning these other things? Why is this here? So my question is, what is the role? He put this here for a reason. And again, these are not necessarily things that you need to explain in the poem, but they're just questions it's here. This isn't a super long stanza. Um, before we move on to the moment, so everything really needs to stand out. Um, I don't just think this is just like a rhetorical device or something. I think this is here for a reason. Um, but in something so short, it kind of feels like this could benefit from some development potentially. Among other things, I'll try to embrace my feminine energy, start to adore the moon. So we're linking embracing feminine energy with the moon. And I know the moon is often associated with feminine qualities. Um, so I'm assuming that these two things are connected. If that's not the case, that's probably something that needs to be explored more. Um, I wonder if moon is enough to already kind of convey some of that idea about the feminine energy. Um, if again, we're kind of just those are referencing the same thing. If they are referencing the same thing, is the moon a strong enough image to already conjure that? And if it's not, is there any way we could maybe condense this? I'll try to embrace my feminine energy, start to adore the moon, because it kind of it almost feels like we're repeating the same idea like over and over again. So I'm wondering if there's a way that we can kind of combine this. I'm watching Murray coil into a rock's cranny. He's hiding. Is this at the aquarium again? Does an aquarium have these things? This is like a documentary. Is this a place where you live by the coast? Or like the place where you move to? Huh. I ponder where I'm supposed to go next. There are no signs. Okay, so interesting idea. So this goes back to, it's like this harkens back to the moving that was mentioned earlier. Maybe not feeling quite like you're belonging in the place where you've gone to. Cool. But I'd like to see more because there's so many questions. Okay, so this stanza took a huge turn from where I thought it was going to go at the beginning. I was super grounded. I was with you in that first line and a half down to sea lions, and then after that, I was immediately thrown for a lot of loops. And I feel like every time I had a question, I then was in seeking my answer. I was just led to another question. So I know way less at the end of this stanza than I thought I was going to know. But where are your guys' thoughts? As you're reading this first stanza, what are your kind of thoughts? Am I completely off base on some of these things? Do you have answers to some of the questions I have? Are none of these things even important? We're just kind of going crazy. Like, kind of let me know how you're thinking about these things, whether you're watching on a replay or in the future. Okay. Any other things from the first stanza? I mean, Francis Church was one other thing that, and this isn't an issue, it's just something that I always kind of watch in my own writing. And I always kind of, if I catch myself doing it, I always ask, what is the role of this? And are there ways to maybe mix up the structure? Because right now, a lot of these are kind of following very similar structures. Like, I do this. I am meeting friends. I lose sight. I just moved. I believe. I will try this. I watch. I ponder. Okay, so it's a lot of these lines, or where the like physical sentences are, and the sentences are starting with I. We don't have a whole lot of sentences here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sentences, and I would say 1, 2, 3, 4. I would say all 7 of them, honestly. If they're not directly starting with an I statement, the I statement's coming is kind of the very clear independent clause kind of driving force of the line. So I would kind of say, hey, Why is that? Is that kind of getting a little bit too? Are we repeating structures a lot? Um, why are when I'm repeating the I in this way so often? What is the effect that that has? Especially because we have a speaker right now that doesn't always have consistent agency. Try to highlight. We're doing all kinds of colors today. Um, let's do some teal. We have a speaker that doesn't really have a whole lot of agency, right? We have a speaker that a lot of things are kind of happening to them. Okay, they lose sight of the penguins. It's like they lose something. They just moved away. Almost feels like it happened to them. Um, Crafting an altar breaks away from us, so they physically make the altar. They'll try to embrace, but that doesn't even necessarily guarantee that they'll embrace. Watching, again, very passive activity. It's not really happening to the speaker. Um, Pondering. Okay, you can physically ponder, but again, not really anything there's no real like action necessarily occurring. Um, yeah, so I'm wondering if there's a way we could develop that a little bit more. Okay, but those are just some things coming across in the first stanza. In general, speaker that's not displaying a whole lot of agency. We'll see what's going on in a second. Once we have 2 years later. Okay, shaved the insides of my head. So this kind of breaks already. We have a speaker that's displaying a little bit more agency, control. I've shaved the insides of my head. Great. So this is speaker has control. Great to see. But immediately they're punished for that control, right? So immediately it's a mistake. Okay. A mistake in March. So how am I supposed to interpret that? So shaving your head would be a mistake in March if March is really cold, I guess. So you're in a climate where it's still winter or early spring. Um, so this is a mistake in March. Um, so again, that could be an opportunity to this could be about audience. Your audience. If you're the poet writing this, you were assuming your audience has certain connotations with March that are, I imagine, the same as yours. Um, it could be an opportunity too, though, to develop and make sure that March is conveying the exact same thing that you're looking for. If you're concerned about that it could be missing out. So maybe if it is about temperature, maybe something that kind of relates back to temperature, like even just like adding like an adjective, like a mistaken frosty March or something like that. I shaved a mistake in March. It's a sign. Again, these use of pronouns are always really tricky and dangerous, right? Because they can mean so many things. If we're not, if they're misread, as certainly could be the case with me, um, or if there's lots of other nouns around them. Kind of what I'm seeing here, like is it the season? Is it the mistake? Is it the fact that the head was shaved? I'm not. One of these, I'm guessing, is the meaning of the it's. It's slightly ambiguous, and that's not necessarily a problem, but it is kind of something that I, as a reader, need to kind of be piecing together. It's a sign like the billowing spines of the lionfish I'm watching. Okay, so we're back at the aquarium again. I'm guessing it's the same aquarium. Right? I'm doing the aquarium. Okay, yeah, same aquarium. Those spines of the lionfish I'm watching. I wonder if we get rid of this eye because we've already had so many eyes earlier. Yeah. Oh, I forget who says it. One of my friends. Whenever we're looking at poems, she always brings up like writing currency. Every time a word appears, it's a little bit less powerful. Um, is there another way instead of saying "I am watching"? Is there a way you can bring me back to the aquarium? Like, for instance, like the billowing spines of a lionfish in the tank. Something like that would help put me there more. Building spines of lionfish. It floats unconcerned by the message. And again, it's the same thing. So it's a sign like the building spines of lionfish in the tank, or I'm watching. It floats unconcerned by masses teaming by. So again, I'm slightly. It is again potentially changing meaning. I'm guessing it here means the lionfish, but it's a little bit tricky because lionfish was originally part of this simile, right? So the building spines of the lion, like the building spines of the lionfish. So I'm as a reader, I'm not sure. Are you finished with that image and then moving on, or are we developing this image more? And if we're developing this image more, then in some ways the simile might be kind of doing it a disservice because the simile, a lot of times similes are made kind of just in passing and then like left. Um, it's one of the reasons I'm not the biggest fan of similes. Um, So if that it is referring back to the lionfish, I think that the simile is kind of taking me off guard a bit for that. I'm wondering if also the lionfish could be made into a metaphor, or even just maybe it could just be directly stated. Might not even need the like or anything like that. But let your reader just kind of naturally make that link themselves without being told. Most finds a lionfish in the tank, or I'm watching. It floats, unconcerned by the masses teeming by. What does that look like? It floats unconcerned by the masses. That's a long line for description of something that isn't really happening, right? It's just nothing's happening. It's not really paying attention to these things. So this is taking up a lot of space. Considering that, it's like this part here to this part here. I'd ask, can we show this? What does it look like if you're unconcerned? What does an unconcerned, and again, I'm assuming this is the lionfish, but so my apologies if it's not. That's just my assumption. But again, there are lots of things that it could mean. What does an unconcerned lionfish look like? Paint me that picture. It floats next to the masses teeming by. They swarm. So interesting here. So now we have another pronoun, right? They. This they is so much clearer if it's referencing back to masses because there's no other possibility. There's nothing else really that's plural that it could be. Whereas for the previous time with pronouns, it's could have been several different things. There's nothing else plural here, so it's a lot clearer for your reader. They swarm, cluster, move on. The lionfish remains. That's an interesting break with the comma. So you have the comma, comma, comma. So this is really broken up. There's a lot of movement, right? You're breaking here, you're breaking here, you're breaking here. But then for the lionfish doesn't have any of that sort of movement. It remains. And notice how static this is. It's almost like water, right? Like this part is all ripply. It's broken up so much. But then with the lionfish, it's like calm water. It's still water. It's not really moving. So lionfish remains. But then kind of similar to what we saw in the first stanza, we move on. The giant Pacific octopus is next. What do you mean is next? Like, is in the next exhibit? Like, I think this could have been clarified a bit. What does this mean? Otherwise, I would also clarify it because if you don't, it kind of just gets like this laundry list, right? Like, oh, first there's this, then there's this, next there's this, and that's not exactly the flow that I think is this poem's going for. Another thing too, one way you can kind of check yourself on moments like this is with the verb to be. The verb to be is like such a horrible verb because it's not even really a verb. The verb to be can't do anything. The verb to be is just it's a bridge. It just connects. So the verb to be says one thing equals something else, pretty much. So it doesn't really do a whole lot. Where possible, see if you can replace the verb to be with like an action verb. Okay, it'll make your movement a little bit more dynamic. It'll add some energy. Okay. Um, and I really don't even know where this is. Like, is this in the same exhibit, different exhibit? It's on the other side of the building. Um, I watched it curling. And then we get a lot of watching, right? So this is we've seen watching before. We saw watch here. We see it up here. We see it here, and then we see it immediately after as I watch. It's so much watching. Um, even in there's other parts that hint at watching, even though the word watch isn't directly used. There's other parts that hint at watching. Um, so man, this is a lot of watching going on. I don't even know if you need it. Probably could just take this off. Like you could say, like it curls and crenellates. Okay, same thing. And now it would eliminate another potential problem with like ing, kind of just like it's very easy to fill up poems with ing words, whether it's adjectives or continuous verbs. So if there's ways that we can make them into more kind of active verbs without the ing form, um, I think it's something that we can try to embrace in general. Um, the giant Pacific octopus curls and crenellates against a rocky tank. You know, um, you could even replace the with you could have taken off that is next part, um, and just gone like they swarm, cluster, move on. The lionfish remains. A giant Pacific octopus curls and crenellates against the rocky tank. Like something like that would kind of keep me moving in the moment more without getting distracted by some of these other language choices. As I watch color ripples across its skin, it can camouflage, be invisible in the sea, but stand out just as often. What is being added by including the as I watch? Isn't that it's already kind of implied? No, unless again we're trying to focus on kind of the passivity of the speaker, the lack of agency. If we're trying to really emphasize that, I could see it, but the color rippling is going to happen whether you say that as I watch or it's not there. These are still the speaker's observations. So I'm wondering, what is the role of this? Okay, so that's my question. What is the role of that? And if it doesn't have a role, um, is something we consider rewording, moving, cutting? Just kind of something to think about. Covers cost its skin, and again, even it's. I would maybe. I don't think you need it's. I would have gone for an adjective. I think that's something that can make it stand out more. Like color ripples across like translucent skin or um, rigid skin, or like you have an opportunity here to really make that skin kind of shine. Um, and it's isn't going to do that. So I would consider replacing this with an adjective. Just make that skin a little bit more vivid. It can camouflage. And again, we have another situation here where I feel like we're not always trusting the descriptions that we're giving. So we're then kind of repeating them in slightly different ways. Um, it can camouflage, be invisible in the sea. Pick one. What? I don't know if we necessarily need both. Um, it's stalling your moment because instead of progressing the narrative that you kind of have going on, um, it's forcing your reader to instead stall, and in fact maybe even go backwards instead of progress. It can camouflage but stand out just as often. Um, I wonder if Again, I do think this is an opportunity, kind of very similar to our previous point. Are there ways we can show this? Instead of saying it can camouflage but stand out just as often, you know, are there ways we can demonstrate that? Like it can become like coral, but instead of stand out just as often. Yeah, well, is there a way that we can also have an image that stands out? Well, I don't know exactly what you mean by stand out. What's something that would stand out? What's an octopus look like that stands out? Um, you know, it can it can become coral or a star waiting to swallow you whole, or so. Like I don't know, like it's something um, there that I think could convey the same thing you're expressing. Do it through an image that'd be a little bit more striking. I've been in many things, including my altar. So by bringing up the altar again, right? So we mentioned altar earlier. Dun, 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 dun. We brought up altar where here. Here's our altar. Altar. Okay. Oh man, we're getting so messy over here. I'm so sorry. um, so we're bringing up the altar, but the first time we brought the altar, like it didn't really get a whole lot of attention. Like it's there, but it gets dropped very quickly. So then to bring it back, I'm almost unprepared for it because it's like, oh, I thought we were done with the thing. We didn't do much with it. Um, I've abandoned many things, and again, we're going back to the generalities a bit. It's like I've abandoned many things. What are the things that we're not mentioning? Um, including my altar, and I still don't know much about this altar. Like this feels like it should be a moment of significance for me as a reader, but because I didn't really get much of the altar the first time, I don't really know how to take it the second time. Um, but I bow to the crimson octopus, grinning at it. Beautiful, visible. Interesting. So we're not entirely sure. Beautiful, visible. Is this referring to the speaker or the octopus? And I'm not saying change that or modify that. I think that can work. I think that's an interesting thought. I think that's compelling, but it is something. Find out the Grimson octopus grinning. I'd probably even get rid of the addict 'cause it's a little bit distracting. These little words, these little prepositions, these little pronouns, they're taking me out of the moment a bit. Many things, including by bow to the Crimson octopus. Why is this happening? Why there's reverence? It seems to be some sort of admiration for the camouflage and things like that. Um, but there's kind of this. I don't know. I would like to go deeper into that. I don't think the speaker is being entirely honest. I don't think the speaker is entirely revealing this relationship or this kinship or this connection that they feel with the octopus. They're kind of like implying it to some degrees, but why don't we just say that? Well, go for it, and don't just go for it, but then dig into it. We're staying kind of surface level here. Okay, so those are my main thoughts on that second stanza. All right, we're at the conclusion now. I also want to check line lengths really quick. So 1, 2, 3, or stanza. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Might just be my bad math skills. All right, how about a second one? 3, 4, 11. That's 11 as well. And 11 as well. Okay, so we have 3 stanzas that are immediately 11. Everything's formatted the same. Everything's about the same length. So that's a question that we can dig into more later. But while I have it, it's like, how is the form? It's like 3 stanzas. relatively stable line lengths. How is the form helping or reinforcing the poem? So by having all these things, how is this kind of tying back to the poem and making things work together? That's the kind of the question I have. And I'm not saying it's not working. If it is working, answer this question and just to kind of verify. And if it's not working, then again answer the question and see, maybe we need to shake things up. Right now everything's fitting together really perfectly and things like that, but for being a poem about transitions and um, lack of control to a degree, um, having a very controlled poem is kind of undermining those those same forces. No. I think there's some opportunities to play around with structure more, but you may have a great argument for it. No, this is actually um, yeah, everything really is reinforcing the goals. I go with a friend. We're not naming anybody in this poem. No one has a name except for the great octopus. The giant Pacific octopus gets all caps, super special. The most important character maybe in this entire poem. Um, no one else gets a name. Speaker doesn't have a name. These friends from earlier don't have a name. Oh, the aquariums have names. That's kind of interesting. That the places have the names. So we're attaching, and that's interesting too, because you mentioned that this is so we have a speaker that moves or that has recently moved, and so the places are the things that get capitalized. That's kind of an interesting dynamic there, um, to kind of show their reverence for place. Um, hmm. Anyways, 2021 seem to be some references back to the pandemic. I'd go with a friend. We are both masking. Again, I wonder if that could be condensed. I go with a friend. We are both masking because again, there's not really action happening. You're already there. Um, like, is there a way we could show that? I go with a friend, and the man at the front desk calls us ladies as we pass and sanitize our hands. Um, Maybe you can mention something about shifting, adjust our masks or something like that instead of just saying we are both masking. Um, just kind of something to consider. Um, or if this idea of masking with the idea of transition, you're like, no, I need that. It's like we are both masking. Like that aspect is really key. Um, I wonder if there's just a way we can make that slightly. Like I can see the intention behind it, but the phrasing I think could be strengthened. Um, I think being paired, both of these being paired together like this, even doing something like maybe even starting instead of I go with a friend, we are both masking. Maybe like my friend and I are masking. I think even as a start to a stance, I think that's a little bit more intriguing. My friend and I are masking, and the man at the front desk calls us ladies as we pass and sanitize our hands. Um, and that's kind of interesting the way you staged that as well. We are both masking. Man at front desk calls us ladies because it almost makes it seem like the reason that they are called ladies is because of the masking. So that's scary. That's an interesting situation you have going on there, just the way you have the line breaks and things as we pass and sanitize our hands. Um, do you even need? I wonder if anything. What's being added by this part here? What's there that hasn't been conveyed? You know, uh, the man at the front desk calls us. Doesn't already imply that you're passing, and doesn't the masking already kind of show the attention that's being sanitized? Um, I don't know. I'm wondering if this job's already been done. It's like, has this already been implied? Unless this is something that you really want to develop a lot more. Sharks and skates skim the sand of their pool. Okay, so like we're getting some of that in some of that consonants, like pass, sanitize, sharks, skates, skim, sand. And it moves on a bit. Okay, I haven't noticed that. Not say it hasn't happened earlier, but I haven't noticed that attention to kind of sonic quality to that degree to this point. Sharks and skates skim the sand of their pool. And because I haven't noticed that as much earlier. I'll be honest, I do find it a little bit distracting. Like it's pleasant, but kind of like, oh, but now it's just kind of maybe even dragged on a little bit too long. Like sharks and skates skim their pool. So I do feel like it'd be a little bit too much because, a lot of these words are also having either similar sounds, similar fricatives, like the sh sound, okay, like sharks, and the skates has two of those S sounds already, skim, and if you got sand, it's just adding on to it. So a little's cool. I do think it could be overdone. Skim their pool. Horseshoe crabs glide under a soft light. Like, are they swimming? I'm a little bit confused by the gliding. I wonder if this is the right word choice. I'm having a hard time imagining the crabs gliding under a soft light. Why am I being told about this light? And again, when I say that, I never mean that as just like, cut it, get rid of it. No, but it's like, what role? Like, let's justify the placement here. What's it doing? What's its job? Because if it doesn't have a role, and again, I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm not saying that's the case here, but in general, so if it doesn't have a role in the poem, then it's like it's distracting to your reader. Um, no, so even this whole part about horseshoe crabs and then the soft light, like I don't know why I'm being told this. An iguana sunbathes and I snap moon photos of moon jellies floating in a blue glow. So we're getting kind of like this list of animals, but I don't know the function yet. What is the function of this list? We've gotten so many animals in this poem, but aside from like the octopus, which got the most attention, got like 3 whole lines, right? 3 or 4 whole lines for the octopus. Did any other animal get that level of attention? Sea lions get dropped. Penguins get dropped immediately. The lionfish might get an extra line, a slightly developed simile, but again, I'm not entirely sure that that's the same thing as the it. Yeah, no other animals kind of doing. No animals surviving in this poem. Everyone's getting chopped off pretty fast. An iguana sunbathes. I snap photos of jellies floating in a blue glow. And so, what am I also supposed to make of the fact that the speaker is? Okay, I snap photos. Okay, so there's something here. Does the speaker finds these important enough to photograph? But why? Why is the speaker so drawn to these guys? Why am I being told the speaker's photographing these? What's so great about these jellies? Is it because of the moon? Just because of the moon? Is that we mentioned earlier? And the blue glow might be kind of harkening back to that. I never wear skirts anymore, so this is supposed to be a pretty profound statement. I don't entirely know if we've earned it yet. Through the gloom. What gloom? I thought there was a soft light. There's sunbathing. Where? Wait, what? Okay, so like, I see soft light, I see sunbathing, I see the glow, but then we get gloom. I missed something entirely because I'm at a very different kind of tone, like emotional space. I'm seeing a lot of light, and then I'm being told this is gloom. So if this is supposed to be gloom, okay, but where did this come from? A little bit confused. Aquarium is near silent. Two of us almost the only people in it. It's full of life. Almost what? I don't know about the. Why is the friend in this? It's like, what role does the friend have here? Why is the friend here? Why is the speaker alone? Why is it? Why do I? What is the friend doing that helps this poem in this stanza? And again, I'm not. That's not to say that the friend doesn't have a role. I'm just curious what the answer to that would be. What role does the friend have here? How does this stanza change if I take out the friend? How's this stanza change? If it just says, I'm masking from demand at the front desk calls me a lady as I pass and sanitize my hands. Sharks and skates skim the sand of their pool. Horseshoe crabs glide in soft light and go on a sunbathe, and I snap photos of the moon jellies. The friend doesn't even do anything else, right? I never wear skirts anymore. Cuttlefish flutter through the gloom. The aquarium is new silent. I'm the almost the only person in it. Is as if I'm in another world full of life, almost possible to imagine. Like, what's changing for me if I just keep it I or me? I mean, the friend's not even doing anything. Um, the two of us, almost the only people in it. This reads a little clunky. Even just looking at it visually, it's a little bit clunky. It's because it's so full of function words. Your function words are like your articles. It's like we have the prepositions in, of, um, also pronouns, it, us. Okay, so like you're what we're left with are almost out of all these words. How many words are these? One, two, three, four, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 words here. Out of those like 10-ish words, one, two, three, four of them are actual function words. Um, this is a little bit clunky. Can we condense this? Try to get rid of some of those function words as best we can. As if we're in another world. You're hedging your punch. It's as if we're in another world. Why not just say we're in another world? Um, I think the simile is weakening your image. This is one of the downsides of similes is that if you compare like a simile to a metaphor, the metaphor is almost always going to be stronger. So I'll say, hey, is there a way we can make this into a metaphor? Full of life, almost impossible to imagine its wonder, its depth. I mean, it's one of those things that kind of sounds nice, but the more I think about it, I'm a little bit confused, especially with regards to the grammar. What's this M dash doing? Full of life, almost impossible to imagine. That it's again these pronouns have really kind of been a bit distracting for me today. Um, is the it's in reference to the life? Is it to the situation of being in another world, the other world? Um, if I just take them out, impossible to imagine, wonder, depth, or something like that, it could be a little bit more striking. Okay. Yeah, I do. I definitely think that closing line could be sharper. When you write poems, there's places where you really need everything to be whatever happens in the middle of poems, things, mistakes, issues, fine. But if there's any place that needs to stand out in a poem, it's the first line, last line, and ideally title as well. Okay, and closing's kind of nice, but not a. It's not necessarily something I'm going to be like. If I were reading a bunch of poems, I would come back to this. Like if I'm reading poems, it'll be like, oh, I need to study last lines. Let's find a good last line. I don't know if I would return to this. It's also almost kind of feels like we're tying off on a bow. This is a super kind of, it's almost like a positivity here, kind of pleasantness to it. But overall, one thing that's missing in this, I never know how to, I don't know how to feel. I feel like there's hints that kind of suggesting me how to feel, but I feel like in general, like if we view emotion on like a spectrum of like 10 intense like positive vibes and then 0 like intense negative vibes, we're kind of always staying around that like 5 mark. We're never really going intensive positive, intensive negative. Some of the things that seem like they're positive are treated in a negative way. So for instance, the skylight floods something with sun, so you move something away from that. So you don't want that light. Like okay. Later on, we're given positive images of light, and then we're referencing it later, a second later, as gloom. So I've never really. Gloom is probably the strongest tone word that you have, but that would definitely be a recommendation I would have here. Is let's try to insert. It doesn't have to be a lot. Can you give me just like 2 or 3 tone words? Just kind of just kind of guide me as a reader to have a stronger idea of how I'm supposed to interpret what's being posted here. This also goes back to the title. This is a very neutral title, super neutral title. For me, if that aspect of kind of just like gender and identity is coming in, I would have considered more transitioning. That would have been more helpful as a guide for me. But yeah, those are kind of the things that stand out to me. All right, I know we've already gone almost an hour on this poem. Originally, I wanted to do 2, but we might have to save the other one for another time. But yeah, these are just my first thoughts. If you have comments on this poem, other thoughts on things I missed or I'm interpreting horribly wrong, be sure to post them in the comments because I would love to know what other people's thoughts are on this. But again, this was part of our series called First Words, where we look at first drafts of poems or early drafts of poems and then just kind of give some thoughts and suggestions of things to consider. Thank you guys so much. Hopefully this is something that we could do on every Sunday, but I'll keep posting on our next stream. Hope you guys have a good day, have a good night, good afternoon. Hope if you're watching on the replay that you guys enjoy what you've heard. And again, great to hear from you in the comments as well. You guys take care. We'll see you in a future video.